to my enormous PlayStation 4 back catalog, I decided that I was going to play a game from a genre that I haven't played in years. A turn-based JRPG. But if I'm going to play a JRPG, I better look the part, right?
Mega Man, you really are the mega-est of mans.
Are you ready?
Hold on.
Yeah!
Hello?
Well, if it isn't my co-host from PixelTunes Radio, Ed Wilson.
Who starts a phone call like that?
Hush, get over here. I need your best JRPG planners kit. Pronto.
I came as fast as I could, but why do you need all this stuff?
Well, I'm going to be reviewing a JRPG.
Ooh, clothes with zippers, perfect. Yeah, and I brought a wacky wig.
Ah, right. I'm going to need this so I can look more smoldery. Smolderish? You know what? Not important.
It's a JRPG. Your hair's supposed to look like you just stuck a fork in an electrical socket. Wow. So what game are you reviewing this time?
Battle Chasers Nightwar on the PlayStation 4.
I've never heard of it.
Well, you're not the only one. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't play this game last year when it came out, but lucky for you, I've dived deep into this game and we're going to be reviewing it today. So, is it worth chasing battles? Let's find out. Released in October of 2017, Battle Chasers Nightwar was published by THQ Nordic and developed by Airship Syndicate for Steam, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. It's also coming to Nintendo Switch sometime in 2018. The game is based on a comic book franchise created by Marvel alumni Joe Madureira. Better known to his fans as Joe Mad, he created his own comic book franchise in the late 90s, which took elements from both fantasy and science fiction and merged it into an arcane punk setting. The series lasted for 9 issues, and the release periods between those issues were pretty stretched out. But ironically enough, the series was postponed indefinitely because Joe Mad began working on video games. He went on to create the Darksiders franchise before his development company, Vigil Games, went under. While Nordic Games acquired the rights to the Darksiders series, Joe Mad formed another development house called, you guessed it, Airship Syndicate. After a successful Kickstarter run to bring back Battle Chasers in the form of a video game, along with more comic books in the future, Nordic Games bought out what was left of THQ and picked up the rights to publish Battle Chasers Nightwar. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Why should I care about a video game based on a comic book property which has been mostly dormant since the early 2000s? Well, the franchise lends itself really well to the type of gameplay that the developers chose to go with. The game is a classic JRPG gameplay style which has been retooled to include a more westernized style of gameplay. Think Final Fantasy meets Diablo. Thanks to the animated cutscene at the beginning of the game, the player is introduced to the 5 leads from the comic books. First, we see Garrison, who is the brooding, beefy swordsman, and he hits just as hard as he looks. Next, we have Gulley, a 9-year-old girl who wields 2 ultra-powerful gauntlets to transform her into a powerhouse capable of lifting boulders and dealing out death blows. The gauntlets were given to her by her father before he disappeared, and the group has been searching for him ever since. Calibretto is the robot golem with a heart of gold, who is Gulley's guardian from harm. He's joined by Nolan, the wise-cracking, alcohol-swilling mage who has joined them on their quest to protect Gulley and her gauntlets. And then we have Red Monica.
Girl, you know I can't tell you lies. That's a minefield of deep emotion. I'll just look right into your eyes, light the fuse and start a love explosion.
Ba-ba-boom! She makes my Monica go red.
No, strike one.
Crikey. Red Monica makes me want to go down under.
Strike two, unnecessary use of an Australian accent.
Monica makes me red in the pants.
Go on.
Like a lobster in the night?
No. Strike three, you lose your armor privileges.
No, wait, no, you can't do that!
Yes, I can!
No!
It says so right on your chest. Take it off.
Oh, well, that sucks. Well, at least I still got the dreamy hair and cool sword. Anyways, Red Monica is one tough lady who is as battle-hardened as she is desirable. She's a bounty hunter and a bit of a loner who seems to show up when she's most needed by the group. Here we have a colorful group of characters that feels unique and familiar all at once. Beginning the adventure, we'll see these 5 heroes aboard an airship. Nolan is seeking to learn more about mana, which is the energy source which powers not only the magic of their world, but also the technology as well. The airship is floating over a landmass called the Crescent Isle, and we see pirates begin to invade as the ship goes down in flames. Frantically, the cast gets split up during the abandonment of their air vehicle.
It's always on me, ain't it? These kids don't know how easy they've got it.
We're being boarded.
Gulley, get below deck.
You break easier than I do, remember? More incoming, port side. Oh no!
Gulley, what?
Gulley.
I've got you. All right, Red. Looks like it's just me and, figures.
Here's a visual layout that might look familiar, the Overworld Map. It's similar to something like a Mario game. Your heroes move between the markings on the map. They can examine the land for hidden treasure by digging at certain spots, or uncovering all sorts of crafting items and gold thrown about the world. Approaching a small town called Harm's Way, you'll encounter a myriad of characters as you will quickly discover that this is the only centralized town in the game, so prepare to visit each of the local businesses as you encounter them. Dugan the bartender and innkeeper lets you buy various battle items in the form of food, as well as allow you to change your team structure once your party grows beyond just Garrison, Gulley, and Calabretto. This is also where the players can rest at the inn, which will restore your life and mana, as well as cure all potential spells that your party might be under. Sometimes when resting, you get different cutscenes, which really showcase some well-written and acted moments between the cast. For example, Monica and Nolan's brand of humor in particular are perfect for the scenarios that the two enter into, and light-hearted dialogue is often used to downplay the seriousness of Dungeon Master battles. But it's not all smiles, as there's some real dramatic and heartwarming moments that really bring these characters to life. Aside from Dogen, there's a colorful cast of townsfolk which are all out to help you. From Mercury, the Enchantress, to Qual, the Alchemist Potion Crafter, you'll certainly be prepared for any magical spells required. You can craft flasks, which work like items do in most RPGs. Revive spells, health, and mana potions, along with other perks, can all be created at the push of a button. Well, depending on if you have all the right crafting elements. It may seem overwhelming to pick up so much crap, but with an unlimited inventory, you can mostly forget about keeping track of what you get, as you generally acquire an abundance of it. Though I will say later in the game there are some items, such as the ancient vampire fangs, that you'll probably have to either grind battles to get, or randomly purchase from the battle-hardened Beastmaster, Raha. She also offers side quests, many of which will help you acquire your ultimate weapons later in the game. The Collector is a mischievous being who collects rare items you'll come across in dungeons. You can also unlock alternate outfits outfits with him, but truth be told, there's only one alternate outfit per character. I would have loved to see this explored more to change up the visual flair a bit for each character, as it does kind of get boring to stare at the same characters over and over, despite the fact that they're really cool. Finally, we have the blacksmith, Grimbeard. While I didn't really use his services much at first, I later learned how important he was to saving vast amounts of time in the game. See, there's a huge focus on getting the best possible gear as frequently as possible. You can purchase books that unlock new crafting abilities, and each shop in the game has a similar gimmick. This will help improve your abilities to build better armor, weapons, potions, as well as enchanting spells that get added to your tools of the trade. I didn't realize how important the gear was in this game for the first 30 hours, so that's a lot of time to waste. In all honesty, as much as you need to look at the statistics of attacks and magic and defense, the biggest thing that you need to focus on in this game is stamina. Stamina enhancing would improve your maximum hit points, and therefore you can last longer in battles, and trust me, you'll need it. When seeing enemy circles on the main map, you can engage with them for a battle. Once your levels get high enough, you can walk past weaker enemies with an option to fight them if desired. This is unlike when you meet bad guys in dungeons where you have to attack them because they'll start charging after you. It's recommended to defeat enemies with higher or equal levels, as your team will net experience points, similar to most JRPGs. However, one of the biggest mistakes that players will make in this game, including myself, is in thinking that defeating even lower leveled enemies will continue to net you experience. For a game that tries so hard to call back to the Final Fantasies and the Chrono Triggers of the past, I mean, come on, look at this scene alone. It's right out of Magus's castle from Chrono Trigger. It fails to allow even the basic concept that grinding on lower level enemies should still give you some experience points. Battles are pretty standard classic JRPG fare. You've got an attack option which maxes out at 4 different attack styles, which are all different for each character. They can raise defense, help with evading future attacks, or just pummel the stuffing out of enemies. Each one of these typically also gives you some additional mana to use in future magic attacks, which are called abilities. This is called overcharge. Burst attacks are measured based on the orange bar on the left-hand side. The bar, which is for the entire team, will fill to complete up to 3 sections. Your characters can perform up to 2 initially, with a third unlockable option that can be found based on specific side quests or challenges that you uncover later in the game. Then you have the items option, as well as the possibility to flee from battle. Next to your character's avatar photo are 2 bars, green for health and blue for mana, both broken down by numbers. To the right of that, different buffers can be added by either you or the enemy, and likewise you can do the same to the bad guys. These include things like bleed, ignite, chill, poison, doom, sunder, and more. Some of these are stackable, so learning your spells and abilities is extremely important, as they can do pretty severe damage depending on the condition. Likewise, your enemy's health will remain on the right hand side along with their buffers. Further along the left hand side of the screen is a character flowchart, which tells you from top to bottom which character or enemy is up next to engage the opposite side. When you're not fighting anyone, your menu holds an option called perks, which can modify stats and abilities depending on what you've chosen. I honestly really enjoyed combat in this game, as it was simplistic enough to understand on a basic level, but thanks to the in-depth strategy of knowing who is attacking next, it helped you plan out whether attacking or magic would work better. However, I felt like magic abilities just weren't strong enough later in the game, with attacks being easier and faster to cast. Perhaps in a future update the balance of the game will be adjusted to fix this, but only time will tell. While exploring dungeons, you may come across a teleportation pod, which helps cut down on travel time. After each pod is found, you can move from pod to pod, and this helps if you have to leave a dungeon to go back to town if needed. However, if you're playing on the hardest difficulty, the dungeon resets after each death. In addition to each time that you reset the dungeon, it randomizes the layout, keeping the core concept the same, but shifting the elements around, keeping things fresh. Each dungeon location is highlighted by a map marker on the screen. This makes the game fairly linear. However, memorizing dungeon locations is recommended. The 3 different difficulty levels adjust based on your current level, which makes the game more fair. And if you die in the non-legendary dungeon, but leveled up beforehand, there's a good chance that you'll be able to tackle the dungeon more efficiently when you return because you'll be stronger. Battle Chasers Nightwar doesn't level up like other classic RPGs. There's a much greater focus here to fight enemies that are way stronger than you. That way, if and when you win those battles, you'll be able to gain more experience points because you defeated someone with higher levels than you. This makes playing the game frustrating because you'll often find yourself going through the dungeons once, then having to go back through them on a harder difficulty. And while this helps net better treasure, it can seem monotonous at times when you just want to move on to experience more of the story and characters. My biggest issue here is that the characters you aren't playing as don't even passively level up. So if you prefer switching around your cast of characters like I do and keeping them evenly keeled, the game forces you to replay dungeons on higher difficulty in order to make this possible. Another helpful way to level up and get powerful equipment without having to deal with dungeon puzzles is in the arena. In the arena, you can fight as much as you want and against whatever difficulty you want. So if you were tired of having to walk back to the dungeon that you just died in, try the arena as an alternative. The Iron Outpost, Path of Fangs, Junktown, The Dig, Deadwatch, Strongmont, the Crimson Garden, and Mana Rifts are the 8 dungeons you'll go through in the game. They're all very different locales, from mine shafts to forests, graveyards, beaches, frostbitten paths, and more. There's also plenty of traps, puzzles, and treasure chests scattered throughout the dungeon's layout. These keep the pacing fresh and unique, and I always welcomed engaging with these during my playthrough. We've already mentioned the crafting elements in this game and how easy they typically are to do. Once you begin crafting, you press a button and it tells you if it's successful or not. And if you have even one of the elements, you can keep trying to potentially get lucky. However, Nightwar also features a simplistic fishing minigame where fish can be traded into this guy, and the currency of shadow coins that are provided can be used at the collector's booth back in Harm's Way. Most of the story is told through either still frame cutscenes like an animated graphic novel or cutscene dialogue between still images of characters, with either voiceovers or written dialogue. While I wish there was more voiceover work in the game because it's all excellent, the moments where the game really shines regarding story involves the characters themselves. And while I appreciated the developers trying to create a living, breathing world with gobs of written books and different notes spread out in the various dungeons, a lot of that content became very long-winded and fell flat at points. It was like a reverse Metroid Prime. In that game, I wanted to learn more about the world around Samus Aran to get a bigger picture, but in Battle Chasers Nightwar, I just wanted a bigger focus on the 5 or 6 cast members. Right, okay, let's chat about the 6th character, Alumon. He's a demon hunter who wields a chain whip and uses heavy amounts of magic to perform some pretty killer spells. You meet him in the graveyard area where he joins your party and informs you of the enemies that have been chasing you throughout the game, the bandits. All of them are under power of a necromancer known as Destra. Now without giving too much away, I can say that Alumon joins your party to try to help you stop not only the bandits, but also Destra on her voyage to reach out to a vampire lord named Varys that she was working with previously. But there are tons of really interesting twists and turns regarding the bad guys, so it makes for an entertaining story. Graphically speaking, if you couldn't tell already, this game is a comic book come to life. While I wished I could zoom in at points to fully examine things, as I'm sure you've seen throughout the review, it's pretty hard to see the font in this game. Battle Chasers Nightwar is a nice balance between 2D animated cutscenes and dialogue-themed cutouts and gorgeous 3D rendered worlds. And while I felt like the map area was much muddier looking than the rest of the in-game visuals, I thought the characters were well detailed and expressive, and the backgrounds were full of excellently used wind and rain effects. However, not all is perfect. The loading times can be a bit atrocious, at least on the PlayStation 4. Thankfully, once dungeons are preloaded, they often won't require that much loading in between rooms, though fights will occasionally need time to process, especially big boss fights. There are also some moments of frame rate nosedives while running through certain environments that are graphically heavy, as well as during Gulley's level 3 burst attack. Now keep in mind, I'm playing this game based on the first post-launch patch. When the game was released, it was riddled with tons of bugs consisting of graphical and audio glitches, and while the first patch fixed some of that, it didn't get to it all. I also started to notice some bugs within the game. For example, sometimes Red Monica's gun would fire, and it would make her gun's entire hitbox turn pink.
Alright, you've got one shot to make this joke. Don't mess it up.
I'd like to put my gun in Red Monica's pink hitbox.
Alright. Excellent innuendo.
Yes!
You get +1 armor.
Woohoo! Sometimes the audio would cut out during arena fights, but the worst was the game crashing on me about 4 to 5 times throughout my entire playthrough, forcing a blue screen of death. Now in most cases this was a minor inconvenience and the game would save my status as I went along anyways. I can recall one specific time when, well, here's an elaborate recreation of what happened. Alright, time for the final boss.
You did it!
Yes! In your face, you! Jesus Christ!
Did you just say cheeses priced?
Alright, looking beyond the fact that I had to re-defeat the final boss to get the ending cinematic to actually play, can we talk about how ridiculous her chest size is? I mean, they took a vampire snake lady and just decided, you know what this needs? Enormous chesticles. You guys know me by now, I'm all for this kind of sexy pinup stuff in games, but I can't help but wonder how Red Monica feels about her eye candy spotlight being stolen.
Even the vampires are bigger than mine!
While the soundtrack isn't your typical JRPG showcasing of dancey electronic J-pop or squeedly guitar licks, here we have a much more brooding and classically Western RPG tracks that border on movie quality, courtesy of the always talented compositions of Mr. Jesper Kyd. From shrill flutes and heavy strings to guitar plucks and booming drums, the entire soundtrack really grew on me as I listened, to the point where I caught myself whistling some of the melodies outside of my in-game experience. So, while it is memorable, it's not the kind of music I generally like with my RPGs, but it's still well composed and engaging enough to maintain a borderline earworm status. I don't know if I wet myself or wet myself.
Such smolder!
Come on. Come on.
You've got this, man. You've spent 50 hours on this game.
90.
You spent 90 hours on this game?
Yep, that's because I was an idiot and forgot to craft for the first 30 hours of the game. But, haha, everything's coming up Miketendo now. Battle Chasers Nightwar is something new and different, yet familiar and classic, all at once. It isn't revolutionizing the RPG, but at the same time, it's making the Western RPG style more approachable to those who appreciate the more outlandish aspects and more otaku elements. From engaging characters and gorgeous art to a melancholy soundtrack, this game doesn't deserve to fly under the radar. And despite some bugs, which will hopefully get worked out in a future update, frame rate clips, as well as the somewhat unusual grinding style, I'd still highly suggest that you check it out. Don't let this battle be chased away.
Alright. You had your chance. Give me the armor.
Oh, no, come on. All right. Okay. Choosy battles choose to be chased during the Night War.
And the wig.
No.
And the sword.
No, come on, not the sword.
This is what happens when you don't make good jokes.
Come on, just let me beat the game.
No, you're not going to beat the game. You make terrible jokes.
No, just let me beat
Bad
the
joke
game.
players are bad
Yeah,
game
but I
players.
just
how it
want to
is.
see the ending. Just let me...
Everything.
Thank you to the following patrons. Your support means the world to me. Want more, dude? You haven't played this game? Make sure to stay subscribed to the channel and check out these videos enclosed below. As always, thanks for watching.